Welcome back to Mama's Garage. Today I'm joined by my father and his girlfriend, Dawn. All right, no more host bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. So I used to live in your balls, and what was it like to start to become a dad? Because you were 35 when you had me.
35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even 20 yet, and I don't know what it's like to even grasp adulthood that late.
Well, when your mother and I got married, we agreed we didn't want kids.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's just the way it was.
That was
for the longest time.
98?
98.
Right at the beginning of 98.
January 3rd, 98.
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it went. And I was banging on the railroad,
Right.
And she was DMing, so we just kind of met in the middle. Sometimes Tuesday was Saturday or whatever. But
by the way, for those young people, DMing does not mean direct message. That means district managing. Cato fashions.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
DMing is more like sliding and being like, hey.
Okay. Yeah. It's just
What,
my
you
speak.
wanna-
I got
No,
you.
it's me translating. He's born in the 60s, guys.
Yeah, product of the 60s.
Goddamn 60s baby.
Yeah. So, what ended up happening is Maddie
Oh yeah, my cousin Maddie.
got to your mom because she's not that much older than
Yeah,
you.
02 I think she's born.
Yeah, I think
Something like
maybe
that.
so.
Mhm.
So she started changing her mind, and then I don't know what to do, right?
Right.
But I'm driving out of Indianapolis one day on a train,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a trailer court off to the south of me, and I can see it. I see it every day,
Mhm.
coming and going. But this particular day, there was a little girl, I'm gonna call her 2 or 2.5 or something, right?
Okay.
And
Itty
she's-
bitty.
yeah, but she was pretty far off the road, right? And she was giving me this shit, the honk the
Oh.
horn, right? And I did. Of course, I always do for the kids, right?
Right.
And she just started jumping up and down. It just brought her all this joy, right? And that's the moment it hit me. I need that shit in my life too.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided we were gonna have one, we're gonna have two, and
Yeah, because you didn't want me to be alone. Yeah.
and you came right on time and came out perfect. And then 2.5 years later, so did your brother.
That's right. I was born 2 days late. That's right.
Maybe, I don't know. She'd know something like that.
Yeah,
but-
because I remember being. I always tell people that's why I'm tall. I had more time in the oven.
Yeah, but you,
Dumb
but,
bullshit excuse.
but I could when your mom was having you, I could see the top of your head, your scalp,
Oh.
But the diaphragm thing wasn't open, so
Right, because
couldn't get you through the birth canal.
C-section club.
So that's where the C-section happened, and we didn't know that until then,
Damn, dude.
And then
I do have a big ass head.
so
Always
yeah,
had, a big ass head.
I don't remember
little
your head
blonde
being-
helmet.
But you were like a little Michelin baby, man. You were just a roly-poly little dude,
Oh, and then tell them what my first thing I ever did.
All right, the very first thing that you ever did was you're out and they're getting ready to snip you, and I can walk over and touch you, and your hands were just out. I mean, hard, like and I put my fingers like this, and you grabbed them. So, and it was one of maybe the shining moment of my life. It just hit me, and then you turned out to be a boy, and I was neutral on it, but I was glad to have a son,
right? Yeah,
but we didn't know until you were born, right? So
okay, I didn't know it was a mystery. Okay.
So at the time, I'm thinking chip off the old block. He was holding handlebars or whatever, like a motorcycle or whatever.
Oh, but little do they know.
But it turns out the first thing you did, you thought you had drumsticks in your hands.
That's right.
There's no doubt about that,
Yeah.
But you did. You grabbed on hard, and I just felt like just an absolute giant.
Yeah.
It was just it was
They do need stick tricks.
And you you twirling them and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I
had to. You sprained my finger, but doing that, right?
Well, sorry. Well,
But it was it was a life-changing moment. Of course, I'll never forget it. But it was a monster life change. Everything changed. All my priorities, everything changed the day you showed up.
20 years ago.
It's almost 20 years ago. Some ways, you look at it and you think, man, and in some ways, it's like that was yesterday,
Yeah, I've been processing that I'm going to be 20 soon, and nothing's really going to change at all because that's not exactly like a landmark moment. Because 21, so everyone's like chasing after and stuff.
Feels about like 19 and feels about like 21.
That's right, yeah. And I don't know, but just the fact that my age has been a 1 and then followed by another number for the past 10 years, so it'll be weird to.
Well,
I'm in my 20s.
It's a threshold to cross.
For sure, yeah. I'm in my 20s now. I'm still on lock. I can't go to like upstairs at comedy clubs or God
'Cause
forbid,
when
a goddamn bar.
Sometimes when whenever you guys come up, I'd say I got 2 teenagers, you know, or whatever, and but I'm gonna be able to say that here,
Yeah.
you know,
Guess
a month, you know, a little bit more than a month, or right at a month, 12. So yeah.
Today's the 14th, so yeah.
Yeah, 20-year-olds. So yeah,
4 weeks today, actually.
You're aging me.
Yeah.
You know, so everybody my age has grandkids, and my
Shit.
oldest is 19, you know, almost 20. So
Yeah, you won't have grandkids for a while.
that's what we're thinking, and Dawn, same deal. You know, there's nothing on the horizon. Her children are older than you guys.
Yeah. How old are your children, Don?
27 and 25.
Okay. So that's right in the middle of your 20s, man.
Yeah.
22 when I had my son, and 24 when I had my daughter.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it's
Perfect.
more normal. So you know.
Now, you were in your 20s during the 90s,
Yeah.
which I think is probably the best way to live on Earth. Because with internet and shit, like, I romanticize the hell out of that.
Not
whole
having
decade.
it, you mean?
Yeah,
Or-
just knowing that, like, because people were probably living in the moment more because there's no phones, you know, movies were a lot cooler. Did you guys realize? Of course you didn't, because the present always feels stale, and then you look back in hindsight, so it's hard to appreciate it. So I try to do that now, because who knows how cool the 20s will be later on. But I'll be 20 in my 20s, or I'll be in the 20s. I'll be in my 20s, which is cool. But I've talked to a guy at work named Mark. We call him the Markinator because he's like the sweetest man ever. But he's like, it's ironic nickname, you know. Markinator, because he's just he's so passionate about science and rocket ships and shit. And he's always like tells these like corny jokes, and we have these meetings on Tuesdays where he'll go over like the injury recap. So like he's like, our goals 2, and we got 4 of them. And it's like, oh shit, dude.
Drats, we're 100% out.
Yeah, Markinator's going off.
Yeah, there's room for improvement. Is it like that?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a lot of like arms going like that, like, you know, like the old like sea shanty shit.
Does he go drats or anything?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, he's very clean. I've heard him cuss before, but it feels like every time he does it, it feels like he's like touching a gun for the first time. Where he knows he's like he's bad, like he's 12 and like trying to like drink a beer. Yeah, he's like son of a bitch. And he looks both ways. Yeah.
What made me cuss?
I know.
Right,
Yeah, these
yeah.
guys. But he was talking to me about how like the 80s were the best. I'm like, well, you say that because what year were you born? He's like, well, I'm 59, so. And then I'm doing a really good impression of him right now. Like, you guys just don't know.
Yeah, you gotta know both sides.
I just told him, I was like, it's probably because you were, you know, you had like the most freedom and you're in your 20s during that. He's like, it's probably right. Well, it hit me the day you were 21 in 1990, and so then I remember you telling me like when I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt right now, like you said, like 1994 was a huge year for music because like Weezer came out, Nirvana, and then like 91, you got Use Your Illusions came out, and like Metallica, Pearl Jam,
the anthem
all that
movement
shit.
began, the Seattle movement was winding down. You know, that's you know.
And you guys had full
Style.
adult
Musically,
brains during that.
And the 90s is probably a little bit more her decade because I'm 80s also, but I don't know. I can tell you this: generations do what you said. They look back at such and such, and how it's portrayed on television is the only thing you really have.
That's true, yeah.
Because I mean, we anything that's in the time of say Little House on the Prairie, right? We're typecast to imagine it just like that, you know. So it gets glorified.
Right. Yes.
Right.
I think about it like it's like a greatest hits album where it's like there are a couple of stinkers on those old albums.
So guys my age and my circle of dudes, you know, we romanticize about the 60s.
Oh,
you know,
fair.
now,
That makes sense.
Yeah, because there were just things that mattered to us. That's the birth time of the muscle car and all that, the kind of things that I did.
Right.
But when people are romanticizing about the 60s, they don't. So, usually don't mention that you could have also got your ass drafted for Vietnam.
That's true. I watched that the other day where it's like because it was like a 19-year-old. I'm like, that's literally me right now.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, and then just like they would like pick like a last name or like they pick a birthday and then they just like list the last name.
It's a lottery or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Or I'm like, that's fucking terrible.
So there's that. So it depends on who you talk to, what kind of stories that if they reflected on if they were 60s, like I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, right? So if you're talking to a person that's a child of the 60s, then they it depends. If they had to go, then they've got a whole different perspective
Yeah.
on that decade at all.
Right,
You know,
and it's a whole chapter of their
and
lives.
then
that
if
probably
they
forget.
didn't, then you got the guy. You could walk into a great blue collar job that you could raise. I mean, they just were dying for people that in that generation. So they all had good jobs early, just right out of high
Right,
school.
yeah,
It was
which
more
is
of a
not
thing.
the case now at all.
So right, and so that's the way it was. Well, I know we're getting off the subject a little bit,
whatever.
but graduated in 1987.
yeah,
What I just said was certainly the truth, and then they call them boomers because there were so many of them at one time. Because the return of people
Right.
come from the return of World War II.
yeah,
So there's this influx
be
of people
fucking-
that are the same age. Well, this is the generation that was my parents or my friends' parents or my aunts and uncles or whatever.
yeah.
And they weren't that much older than me, so they're on these jobs, and you got to be, 60 or 70 or 65 or whatever, retire. Well, those jobs were all filled, and then most places were beginning to cut back on things. So sometimes,
Beans are done.
They are.
so sometimes you have people who were laid off for a lengthy amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So it left no room whatsoever for a new hire off the street because there was no demand.
Oh shit.
And that's the way it was when I got out of high school. So I could.
You had a lot of jobs though.
Yeah, but I was a jack off too.
Right,
You know? I
yeah.
mean, I wouldn't take anything seriously, and I was fucking around at college, and, but some of my friends who didn't go that route in any way or shape or form, 4 or 5 years later, 6 years, 8 years later, then that wave of that generation started to retire pretty much in a wave.
Yeah. Okay. So
And that created the vacuum and let us start getting decent jobs.
Okay.
And that would even apply to the railroad because I'll tell you how point that is in my department, this is not factual, but it's roughly right. Okay, it's just something you can use. 1974, they just stopped hiring in my department, and that's because back then there were 5 guys on every train, right?
Oh.
And there was 3 on the back on the caboose because they had cabooses, and there was 2 on the later. And then technology comes along and starts making these jobs irrelevant, so they start taking them off. So now they had a pool of people that were furloughed, just like laid off, right? So the railroad didn't have to hire from 1974 until 96.
Oh wow.
So that's 22 years of no new faces in my department, right?
Damn. Yeah.
So then when I got there, everybody there was at least my dad's age, and so they were on their way out,
Right.
And but it happened in waves like that as far as the job aspect goes.
I never even thought about that. But
Yeah,
just,
it's
like how
it's something I lived
populations
through,
work. Right. Yeah.
first person.
Huh.
But as far as the '90s go, I know that people in Hollywood, music people like to emulate the '80s a lot, But I don't ever hear the '90s being glorified much. So it's probably something from your generation.
No, that'd
You know
be
what I
true.
mean?
Yeah.
Because I just
like,
don't hear it.
Feels like styles coming back and stuff. But I think I just like a lot of music from the '90s and especially movies from the '90s.
Well,
I just
then-
watched Fargo for the first time.
Fargo's great.
Fargo's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Steve Buscemi, he's Randall
No,
from
you're
Monsters
kidding.
Inc.
You're
But then
right,
I was
he
like,
is, yeah. And he's a very dynamic guy. But Dawn would be better to talk about the '90s, I think, because that's where she came up. 'Cause she's
Right.
she's 6 years, so she was born in '75.
okay, so they were 15, 1990.
So she graduated high school in '94.
Yeah,
93.
93. Okay.
And she was like me. She was 17.
I was also all of us were
Right.
17 then.
And, and she was 17 for a minute in college, because and our birthdays are 2 days apart. I don't know if you
Okay.
knew that. We're 5th and
Oh, you're
7th.
5th and 7th, yeah. So then,
What do you want to know?
I don't know. I mean, like, I forget. Did you start at IU?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, initially it was kind of a crazy time in my life. My parents decided after 17 years they were divorcing.
Oh, wow,
Literally, they told us the day after I graduated high school.
Damn.
So I chose IU because, well, primarily, I was offered a 50% scholarship to play softball. Who in their right mind? And my parents decided to emancipate me then, so making me independently responsible for myself.
So you kind of were.
Because they would have
kinda
fucked
forced
my
it on
dad
you.
because of
Yeah.
the money, whatever. And he, at the time, was getting into a new marriage with a brand new baby. And so here I was turning
We talked
18,
about this, yeah.
and then
Damn.
and a stepsister comes along who was a pain in my ass.
Basically, your niece.
Just
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
My sisters I have 3 of them, and they're 12 years, 18 and a half, and 20 years younger than I am.
Damn.
And I have a brother, and he's 2 years younger than I am, and we were raised together. So, but anyway, I chose IU, and then the bomb gets dropped that my parents are divorcing, and my dad is finally going to go to Illinois because that's where the home office is, and he was over traveling. He traveled the majority of my life. And
they move state to
a
state
lot.
and stuff.
Oh,
And I
wow.
went to 14 different schools, and that's not including college. That's just school.
And
We
she
can-
settled
let's-
down in high school because that's all at Whiteland. But she went to Catholic school up until that point, and she went to 14
So we
different
moved
ones.
to Indiana my freshman year. School's already in session 2 weeks when we come here. I know nobody.
Right.
I don't know, like, really who I am style-wise because...
Well, because you've had a
I was,
shot like the
I was
complete.
dictated to every day. And we're, it's just a different culture here. People wave. People are friendly. People take time out of their day to acknowledge your existence. And that doesn't happen everywhere. So,
Yeah.
there's a fortunate thing that nobody realizes. It's taken for granted here. But anyway, no, so IU just made sense, and my dad told me that he was going to be going to Illinois, and I had to make a decision by the end of that day. And it was Sunday morning. I'll never forget it.
That's not enough time at all.
And I'd already accepted at IU. But honestly, I mean, this sounds like I'm so childlike, but and I am, I guess. I loved my dad so much. Like he was my person. And I didn't. That was just a shitty decision to have to make at that time. But I chose me totally selfishly. I chose my comfort zone, which was here.
Right.
It was the place that we lived really the longest, where I evolved
So
the
it
most
felt
because
like
I
the
was
most like home.
coming in. Yeah, it really. That's the funny thing is, there really is a sense of that. Now, do I have like a childhood home to go home to and just like walk through the door?
Right. Yeah.
No.
I forced have that 'cause I've been in the same room my entire life.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
like insane to me. Well, as is living out here, like with your dad and I. This is the most rural, and this is not rural according to you guys, but
No, dude.
to me, it's like
there's no cows around here.
dude, there's
Tell me.
chickens sometimes in our backyard, or snakes, or shit I have never been
Yeah,
exposed
no
to.
fucking pigeons though. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
nothing like that, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just things are a lot different here. So anyway, I'm sorry I get
No,
off
no,
subject
please.
a lot.
We have all the time in the world for
Let it go.
tangents. Yeah.
So anyway, so I attended IU, and initially I wanted to be a pharmacist, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
That was like where I thought I was going. Until one day, like the summer of my freshman year, I think, I was dating some stupid boy, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it was like the end of the evening. We were just going to go hang out at like his parents, house pretty much. And we get there, and I was like, he had family over. And he said, yeah, my uncle's here. You got to come in and meet him. You're going to love him. He's great. And I'm still 17. But anyways.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So we go in there, and of course he's like your typical like 45-year-old going through his midlife crisis, thinking
Yeah.
like young girls are really gonna dig him. No, motherfucker, get a clue they don't. But yeah, and it doesn't flatter him either when they fucking gawk and stare and no, it's
Yeah.
gross. But
it's a big gap too.
so like at the time I was like at a summer job working for A&W, and I loved it. It was in the
the
mall.
root beer?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we
Hot
sold
dogs
hot
or
dogs and
Oh
restaurant.
stuff.
shit! I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah, but we made our root beer every day.
Oh.
It's like the most fattening shit ever. But it's delicious.
I
I,
don't even know-
love it.
It's
What the,
processor.
hell, what the hell is the root part? Of,
The root beer, it's an extract because there's a what do you call it? An herb.
like
You know, like
ginger?
sassafras.
Oh, okay.
Sassafras comes really close. Or like there's a birch. But it's
I'll be damned.
like birch beer.
I
If
never
you've
knew
never
that.
had it,
Yeah.
there's like a really strong bite to it.
Uh-huh.
It's not as creamy.
I see.
It's more. I
Yeah,
don't
because
know,
root
you
beer is kind
know.
of a mystery. So it's
love
cola
it.
in general. It's just as
Delicious.
From a bean, though, you know
Yeah.
that, cola
Yeah.
beans, but
You
I
know,
didn't know
but
anything about
just-
root
Didn't
beer.
know that at all,
It's an
Randall.
extra.
Oh, I thought you did. Yeah,
Nope.
it's a cola bean, yeah.
So anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck?
So,
Fucking got protein in it?
Yeah, you know, I just gave you credit for knowing.
Yeah.
I thought you did.
I appreciate that,
I
but
thought
no.
you-
Worldly. No,
I mean, I knew what a cocoa bean is.
Yeah.
yeah. Coffee, chocolate.
Yeah,
Right.
That's the cola, though. That's
Yeah.
where the flavor comes from.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check you on that. I need, you know how like Joe Rogan podcast is like, has like their Jamie, you know, I need like a
Yeah.
tech guy. I have to be that guy.
Snopes.
Yeah, right. So I don't want to derail, but like, all right, you want to let's continue. Yeah, cola bean.
Yeah.
All right,
Here we go.
Tell me
Here
all
we go.
about it. But
Okay, so
45-year-old
anyway,
uncle guy.
yeah. So anyway, he meets me and he's like, "Hey, he needed a girl, like just an office girl, kind of like your girl Friday. She does everything from enter payables to receivables to invoice. Just takes care of.
Just kind
and
of like
it's
a
small,
gopher.
but mightier than anybody knows, because she's the gatekeeper too.
Okay, right.
So that gave me like an ego at a young age, But
17, yeah.
so I decided though, or he offered me a job. He's like, "Can you type?" I was like, "Well, yeah, who the fuck can?"
Yeah.
But he's old. He's old school.
That's,
So
no one would ever ask that in this day and age.
yeah, right. It's just assumed.
Yes, I
But,
can type.
So anyway, I started working for him, and that stuff, I was really good at it. I was good at the books. I was good with the. It makes me tick. So I knew then that like accounting was kind of be where I wanted to go, or I thought anyway. And but at the end of my sophomore year, my father's oldest brother passed away, which was a year and a half older than he was.
That's
And
really
so, excuse me.
That's really close in age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just a really big shock to our family. And he had just married 6 months prior and had a 6-month-old baby.
Oh,
And he had no insurance because he was uninsurable. He waited too long to get insurance, and there gets a point where you can't.
Prior, it's already
Prior,
existing.
nowadays, like anybody can get insurance because they will not exclude pre-existings. But
It's the good thing about Obamacare. That's the one
that's
thing.
only.
okay.
That is like, well, I'm not going to say only in politics is not why I'm
And
here.
Obamacare is why you're still good medically, 26 through me, but not the vision and the dentist.
Right.
The
But
flares.
the medical, because that's a federal law, but it only has to do with the medical part. So the insurance companies aren't going to just throw anything in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
okay,
can't.
that makes sense.
Yeah. At any rate, though.
So, let's see. So, anyways, I had this aunt that was just lost her husband and the love of her life because they were 42 years old. I mean, they found each other late. And so I thought, I was always so proud of where I came from, or I thought back then, a big, strong Catholic Italian family, and loud and obnoxious, and just I love it. And we really love hard. And so my dad was like, do you think that maybe you might want to finish school, go back home and help Sheila? And I couldn't say no. Because that little girl, and I know my uncle was a lot like my dad, and that little girl was never going to know how wonderful her daddy was.
Damn.
But I did. So, that's what I eventually did, and my credits transferred. I just kept going, and I love ball. I still played. That was a big thing, and they did reduce my scholarship, but I got to keep
Right.
a last
So you
portion.
went from Bloomington back to New York,
Buffalo,
right?
yes.
Yeah, Buffalo. That's right. Yeah.
So I did that and helped her with all that stuff, and in the meantime, got to know my family as coming into adulthood and not remembering it as a child, which were two totally different things.
Yeah,
But
of course. Yeah, because everything's kind of just like watered down. Like,
yeah, big
whenever
time,
you're a
and like
kid and-
living there is totally different than visiting, because when you visit, everybody
Yeah.
caters to you,
Right,
and
it's-
you eat the best food, which like I love food, so
of course, and like.
But all that-
That's like whenever a teacher would get like evaluated, and they're like, all right, well, I'm gonna put a suit on today, and we're gonna have like a whole presentation. It's like, well, come in on Tuesday when we're like watching the Polar Express or something like that, where it's
Yeah.
like, you're gonna get the warning, so you get the full Rolodex of what's
Exactly.
going on. That makes total sense.
Pre-known scrutiny is better than surprise scrutiny.
Yeah.
yeah, everyone's house
Exactly.
is clean, everyone's in
Right.
their Sunday
Yeah.
best. No,
All the kids clean their desks and shit. It's
yeah,
like-
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah, it's just all it's phony as fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Like,
just fucking
I'm
straight
like-
up. It's straight up horseshit.
Yeah, I noticed it when I was like 9. I was like, this is different. Like it's elevated. This isn't about
So I
It's not like
learned
keeping
that.
their job. Yeah, whatever.
That was so. Anyway, my senior year is getting ready. It's I start my senior year, and here comes spring training, and I wasn't really feeling well, and I was in a committed relationship, and well, lo and behold, I got the biggest surprise and one of the greatest things I've ever done. I was pregnant, and I didn't get to play my senior year. And so I was never going to be a fucking Yankee.
Yeah.
I mean, that was never going to happen. But it was bittersweet. And I was so scared to become a mother, but it was never an option to do anything but that.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And even my father at the time said, "Have you considered all your options?" And I said yes. And he said, "Well, what are you going to do? Because life as you know it, once that child is born, is never ever going to be the same."
Yeah. But yeah.
It's not going to be about you. And
I've also heard that it's not that kids change you; it's that kids should change you, and it will. And if it doesn't, then it's like you're fucked up, man.
It should bring out the best in you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You feel just an absolute just responsibility if you do it properly.
Yeah, exactly.
And a love that you can't fathom. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah, that's like I think I was watching this guy on YouTube earlier about some stand-up bit, like old one, where it's talking about how pet owners call themselves parents, and it's like he was like, I can throw your cat off a balcony tomorrow, and a cop will probably high five me. You know what I mean? It was Chris Stefano, and then he's like, it doesn't work the same way with children. It's not the same thing. And so for those who don't, But
the people who say that, the stereotype, and it's probably true to a degree, like most of them are. They don't have real children.
Yeah, and I bet they would make great parents though,
probably,
if they care that much about an animal.
I've said it to a few people, guys at work and stuff, and don't want kids, and all they talk about is this fucking dog, man.
Yeah,
like it's getting a PhD or whatever. It's the first one to graduate from anything in our entire family.
Yeah. Oh god.
It goes to daycare.
Yeah,
it eats better than you.
And had to take a break from his studies to go to Olympic tryouts. I mean, it's like this fucking dog. And.
Tom Segura has another bit about that where it's talking about how pet love is for sure real, but he goes, but if my dog did anything to harm my kids, without hesitation and without question, I would drown that dog. It's like through yelps and shit.
We have first-hand knowledge on such a thing, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yes.
We want to tell that story real quick?
That's fine with me.
Then we'll get into cola beans if you have that ready.
All right, I got a little bit of it.
Okay, then we'll talk about the other,
Yeah. Okay, as far as the cola beans go, I guess, that's just something, I've never looked this up before.
Okay, that's why we learn.
But
Sponsored by Mama's Garage.
But it's been, I've been told, and have every reason, in my upbringing to believe there's cola beans. But,
all right,
here's what it says. Because I do cola beans, and it turns out being decoration shit or shit you cook with. That's nothing to do with the pop. Oh. So I said cola flavoring. That's how I did this one,
Okay.
So, what is in cola flavoring? Well, I'm expecting to hear, see
fucking
cola beans, bitches.
Beans.
Yeah, beans, bitches. What the fuck,
It's just beans.
Okay, here's what it says. The primary taste of Coca-Cola is thought to come from the vanilla and cinnamon with trace amounts of essential oils and spices such as nutmeg. And that's what Wikipedia says. Leaves it just that simple. And they even, and I didn't realize until I read it, but they even go to the Coca-Cola route.
Okay, yeah.
So they used a brand name, they capital C's, the hyphen, the whole bit.
Right.
So I mean it's not red, but
but that's pretty much the parent function of cola. Yeah.
Maybe there's more research to be done, but I don't want to do it right now.
But you said cola beans are like their own separate endeavor, kind of a thing.
Cocoa.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, cocoa beans.
And I suppose. I could have had that fucked up my entire life.
Yeah, it's there's been times before where you said some shit just like incredibly confidently, where I'm just like, you know what, he believes that, and it's making me believe that as well. But then I was like, I do think we should, put it to the test.
Cite the source and putting in trust but verify and all that shit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and but I was pretty sure about that one, and I turned out to be pretty much wrong on that.
Thanks for biting the bullet on there. That's awesome.
Mythbuster, man.
Yeah. I just want to know. I don't want to spread misinformation.
I'm a champion of being wrong. It's all right. It comes to me naturally.
Perfectly fine.
It's the easiest falling off a log, they say. All right. So where we're going after that?
I would drown that dog. Yeah, about defending your
That's
children.
fucking I don't remember what kind of dog was that.
Some pit bull type shit. Like he was lean and like a jump. Big old jump. It was a neighbor's dog.
It was a mean little fucker. The neighbors, they had kids younger than well.
No, because they were
one's older than you and the twins between you two.
Yes.
Right. So so these guys they're all about the same age. They never really gel all
we're
that
on the same
well.
school bus and shit.
And their next door neighbors on our side of the road and everything, and they own that dog, and you were out fucking around in the yard. And I was on the porch or something. I hear you anyway. Yeah. It went after you, right?
It went after Max.
I remember.
It jumped up and.
Okay, I remember what I did more so than why I did it.
Yeah. I can probably.
Okay, yeah, help me out here. Yeah.
What I remember is that like I think it was like by like the basketball goal or whatever, but like the dog was like just it could be lovable, but it's just like those have a reputation of just being fucking aggressive all the time, and it jumped up and like. I think like the snout was like it also like punched Max in the face, but like it also like tried to bite him a little bit. So like got like basically like his upper cheek by his eye area, and then he's squalling because he's like
that's
6
probably
or
where
7.
I came in, right?
Yeah, and you hear that shit, you're like, oh, all right. And so you see that this dog is clearly at fault, and I'm probably like I was so shy and like didn't have any control back
that's
then.
before you came out. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Before and I was like, I probably would just like the dog did it, and then you went in full like. Papa Bear mode.
That dog, I was going after it, and it acted like in the beginning it was going to face off with me, but then it ran right and it went under the trampoline, and I went under the trampoline after it, right?
Yeah, we watched this shit from the porch.
And I punched that dog right in the fucking head. I mean, I did. I mean, just a fucking haymaker, man, gave it to that dog. Because I was pissed at what it,
I understand you're protecting.
And that dog fucking, and then it got a little aggressive there, and I got it because I know I hit it twice.
But, exactly. But what I know from just dog, like you have to alpha it, and like once you do that, it's like oh shit. Because if the dog thinks it can win you over, then you gotta fight. You're in kind of a deficit.
They don't respect you, man.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
But then
it's a cat thing though too, because man, our cat, your dad does not want the cat in here when it's bedtime.
Yeah.
So if that bitch runs from your dad. He is on a fucking mission. He won't hurt her. But man, he's going to fucking find her. I come in our bedroom one day and our bed is fucking 2 feet from the wall.
Oh my god.
She went under the bed and stayed. Right?
Oh my, but you don't want that.
I ain't going under because I'll go in there and get all dusty and shit, right?
And then not even find
it. And then she'll just take off. So I was like, fuck that, we're not doing that.
Of course not, no.
So yeah, I got her out from underneath that motherfucking bed. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, like the running from your dad is the worst.
But when it's time to go, it's time to go. But that dog, it learned its lesson because we saw it like a day later that day.
Yeah.
And it wanted to go to the neighbors, which was on the other side of our house.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of dogs on the other side.
So this is the side where the Amy and the logger guy and all that. That's where the dog came from. And then where Bruno's mom came from was where this dog wanted to go. Well, it went across the road into the pasture, across the pasture, through the fence, across Steve's yard to avoid. Remember that?
Yeah.
That dog. That's how that dog went around there. Wouldn't even go through our property. Wouldn't even go on our yard. So then I let the owner, the dad of the kids know next door, and then we never saw that dog again. That's what I expected, But you got bit by a different dog.
The other side of the other neighbor.
Yeah, the other neighbor. Yeah. So this.
Yeah, I was 12. It was like because Bruno, our dog from the same house that this happened at, he would just trot around the Tri-County area, and then motherfuckers would just pick him up, and then he ended up being taken to the pound a bunch, and like the last time we did it, it was
it's in Johnson. I mean, it was in Monroe County.
Yeah,
I remember.
It was $100.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to get him, to bail him out, and then we found out that he was there because our neighbor Paula, which is where we got the dog from, let us know. So once we got Bruno home, he was as happy as could possibly be, and tail wagging and everything. We were over there to like tell Paula, thank you for telling us to she also knows the dog real well. All on the porch.
And I'm on a train at this point.
Yes.
I'm heading to Ohio. 2017
probably, I think it was. And while we're talking, like I was on the brink of puberty, and I was like 5'9", 5'10" at the time, and so I was like getting bigger, and I think whatever my presence was just pissed off this dog, and they had a bull mastiff on the other side of the house. It was all caged in. I forget. I think it was called Moose or some shit like that.
Moose sounds right.
I think it was Moose.
Some hard ass dog name. Like if you're a dog, you have that name. You gotta have brass knuckles and shit.
It had the same reputation as like the dog in Sandlot, but it wasn't like
chopper sick balls.
Well, that's
Stand by Me. Yeah.
But it just just drool at the mouth. It's like don't fuck with this beast. But then, whatever, I think it probably saw me walk on the porch. But then, before I know it, I see that dog run around the corner, like run. And then Darren, the guy who owns the Paula's husband, was like, "How the hell did you get out?" And then I black out for a split second, and then all I hear is just my mom screaming, and I can feel the dog it's like the size of me on its hind legs, and it's just like. It didn't get me too hard because luckily they were like right there. But if I was alone, that dog would have fucked me up.
It snuck up behind him.
Yeah.
It was a real cowardice move.
I really cannot remember. It's the only time in my life I've ever like blacked out a memory like that because it was just like actually like traumatic. But it didn't even give me that bad. But I have a scar on my elbow from it, and like it bit like my little love handle. And I was like, motherfucker, that's what I'm sensitive about. But they had and a lot of aggressive dog talk this episode. But these dogs are fucking up children.
Right.
So that dog was dead by the end of the night. But I remember walking away like pale in the face. I didn't cry till like 2 minutes later because I was just like shooken up. I wasn't hurt.
In shock?
Yeah, I was in shock because, like I said, I don't remember. I just remember I remember seeing it, and then I remember like a abrupt noise. Like there was just like a small like little few second gap where I just don't remember any of that. That's actually the first time I'm realizing that I don't remember that, but it must be just because it's just from if I just shut down, I guess.
Could be adrenaline rush. It affects different people different ways.
That's right. Yeah, that's the only time I've ever had like bad dog luck though.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I just I think I just had like a little scar, and then actually, their daughter, I forget her name.
Your ambulance driver.
Yeah, I forget, but.
Oh wait a minute. Oh shit, I lost it.
No, I know.
Fuck.
Anyway, she's great. She actually was an EMT, so she came over to the house and like patched me up and stuff, and like she obviously they felt obligated and bad that I was all screwed up and everything, but like, that thing got me.
Probably think about potential lawsuit or whatever
Yeah.
When I find out about it, right, and I'm going over, so I get back. I parked over on that side. We always did, and Darren saw me. He just walked over. I didn't go to the house because I wanted to talk to Darren, right? He came over and he said, "Hey, I'm sorry." I said, "Hey, I realize it's not your fault." I said, "What about the dog?" He said, "That dog's gone." I said, "All right, that's all I needed to know, man." And we shook it off. We never talked about it again because it's not his fault. The dog did it.
Yeah.
But he took care of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not about killing dogs. I'm not about punching dogs.
Yeah.
But children come first.
Right. Yeah.
Just period.
Exactly.
And that may not be popular these days, but that's what I'm going to roll forever.
Yeah.
So
Right. Especially if it's your kid. Yeah.
And especially, but any kid. If I saw the same deal, that dog, I'd punch that dog for biting your neighbors.
Fucking RKO.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm not.
Adjustments. Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to throw down boxing gloves in a
Yeah.
canine fight or anything
Right,
like that.
You just can't have dogs fucking kids up, man.
And I can't have that shit. Yeah, some stuff, man. You just gotta, no way, dude. No way. What's your earliest vivid memory?
Let's see. Do you remember where my crib was positioned in the house? Because if you can probably confirm that, then I can probably tell you what my memory was. Because my memory is like in my room. So basically, where my TV's at now, a little further close to the door is where. I think it's
right about midway through that wall, along that wall. That's where your crib was.
Okay, then that's for sure. Because I remember standing at my crib, and I like the hallway light and the door was like peeking through like the brim of my door. I just remember just like trying to get someone's attention. It's like, just like it's like the pilot episode of my memory.
Right.
And then I have a lot of memories of being at Kim and Becky's.
That was early. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been going there for my first 8 years of my life basically. But I think it's got to be it. Me being in my crib, just being like, whatever baby version of that was. But I don't know. I remember preschool bunch. I don't know what I did before that. You just kind of exist. Your brain just kind of, humans are so fragile. You just gotta it just takes years to fucking get to the point where it's like
and dynamic.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
There's so many strings.
Yeah. I remember all the preschool stuff, and I can probably Yeah. So I mean, I've had a memory for a while, but I don't really count. Like, I didn't feel like I had really control over what was going on until I started playing the drums. Whenever I started getting off the bus on my own at home. Probably it's like when I start it's kind of the chapter change in terms of
that's significant.
Yeah, exactly.
Step in your life too.
It's being alone, just kind of developing my own self and stuff. But what's your first memory?
Earliest memory that I can come up with,
Uh-huh.
and I don't really know how old I would be, but it could be figured out.
Yeah.
But we lived, of course, just me and mom and dad.
Right. Okay, before Mike.
way pre. Well, Mike's almost 5 years younger than me, so I can remember all that. You know? But I have just flash memories of this house, and some of it's reinforced by a couple of photographs. Okay, they're black and white, but so some of it you got to allow for the power of suggestion from the photos. But I still remember we lived on a street corner, so there was cars going both ways. But I was little. Right?
Yeah.
So the earliest, just absolute memory that I can remember having is my dad was your age, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
For real. And he was push mowing grass, and I had one of those plastic little kid push mowers, like yellow and white, blue and red and shit. So I was out there. I was mowing the fucking grass too, because whatever he did, I wanted to do. That's just the way it was.
Tom, I got you.
Right? Yeah, no shit. Because I'm out there. I mean, fucking business, right? And I'm doing this shit, right? I got a fucking brand new lawnmower. Dad's got a lawnmower. His is noisy, mine's not, right? But that day, my dad lost his wedding ring mowing grass.
Oh.
So, the nuts and bolts of that, I can just remember it happening because I'm so little, right? But I remember being out there on my hands and knees in the grass that I thought I mowed, checking for that ring, and crawling around and stuff, and evidently he found it because he has it now.
Yeah.
But those are the things. I remember the lawnmower. I remember Dad was doing it. I thought I was doing it. I was fucking man as fuck, man-ass son of a bitch right here, mowing some motherfucking grass, and then Dad loses his wedding.
Well, I changed my own diaper,
so,
motherfucker.
So now no matter what Mom was doing or Dad was going to do after mowing or whatever, everything's fucking off because you got to find that daylight and all that.
Right. So I wonder if if triggers, you had a mission. You probably understood. Okay.
Maybe so. Yeah. Well, and it's
shiny.
It's two things at once because I know I was very, very excited to have that lawnmower. Because your imagination just runs.
Exactly.
It's just like Dad, so I'm doing what he's doing, and he's king shit. Because
it just fit from my side.
I didn't have an older brother like you. The oldest, you just, you
That's
don't.
True,
until your younger sibling comes along, you're kind of, you just kind of along with the ride with your parents.
That's right. Yeah.
Whatever. And but you put those two things together, and maybe it did jar me or something. But I've asked myself this question plenty of times, and in plenty of different states of mind, and I always come back to that. So that's when I call it, Now, brief little things or something like that, something from Roberta's or something that could have happened before then.
Yeah,
that's very, very possible. But that's a memory that I could put together. So. You gave a whole memory, and so so that's why I went directly to that. Yeah. So's mine, but it was a big fucking deal to me that day,
Yeah.
So,
It is weird though to be because your brain's older than your memories, and so shit's working, because you're reacting as a baby, just that's not being stored almost.
Right.
I don't know.
Or is it? Yeah. Is it there? But it's it's subconscious.
Yeah, subconsciously.
Could be because something. Your pediatrician. Which I love that guy.
Dr. Laughlin.
Yes, he was a good man.
Too old for that guy.
Yeah, I know you'd give him up. But when you were born, and when Max come along too. I worked so crazy. I wasn't around the weekends and evenings so much and all that. But for things I would mark off.
Right.
And. So I took you guys to the pediatrician quite a bit. I took you for your very first visit.
Oh, yeah.
So Dr. Laughlin said to me, we were just talking, I'm a new dad and all that, so,
Right.
And he wasn't preaching
or anything
like that.
Chill,
just chill as fuck and reasonable, and just
I was always like, oh, okay. I'm going to get better because of this guy.
Right, yeah, he was referred to us by someone, but I don't remember who.
Was it Veronica?
Could have been.
Yeah.
It very well could have been. Yeah. But he's a winner, But what he told me was, and it struck me hard, that in the first 2 years of your life, you're gonna learn 80% or more of what you learn for the rest of your life, because you start with nothing.
That's true. Yeah. Anything you encounter, you're gonna store.
Well, until he said that to me, that concept had never hit me. Because you're learning how to wake up, you're learning a nipple, you're learning this, you're learning what colors are. The most fundamental things, and every one of those is a springboard. It just gets more complicated and more complicated in your mind. So when he told me that,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that hit me hard because, when you consider it, there's some truth to it. Well, there's more than some truth to it. It's
Yeah, it has to be.
So I guess that whatever your first memory is. it's just a product of that's your mind developed that far, you know, and we don't have it at the very beginning. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I feel like if I didn't want to be like an entertainer and like do drums and comedy, I think neurological shit fascinates the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I wonder if I would care to do that.
I don't know.
Like,
You got the mind for it for sure.
try.
You know?
Yeah, but
What about you, babe?
your first memory.
I think I'm probably just a little bit over 2 years old. I have to be.
Uh-huh.
Because I remember my mother changing my brother, who is 2 years and 2 months younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her changing him and looking at him thinking, what in the hell is on his cookie? Why? What is that thing? He's a boy.
Cookie.
Oh.
I'm a girl.
Cookie
I don't
slang
know what
for-
the fuck that is going on down
She
there.
saw her first penis was a
I saw my
brother's.
first penis. That's my
yeah.
first memory.
That's awesome. That's actually a
mean-
perfect answer.
You know, at like
You
a
call
little
it.
over
I've never heard
two.
that before. I always hear vaginas be called. You know, if the cookie's thrown around in genitalia, it's always yeah. Which doesn't make any sense either
Well,
because it's a circle.
Cookies are
It-
safe. She calls a couple other things cookies
Yeah,
too. It's a
I
safe
call,
word
I call
thing.
It's
marijuana cookies
Yeah.
Okay.
too.
But that's if you're texting her on cell
You
phone
know,
or
because
whatever.
I see,
really,
you know.
it's a little
You
too
don't-
free out there to be
you
like,
don't
hey
wanna get-
man, you got any weed?
Yeah.
I mean,
But
Right.
see what so what her
Fucking
so
Cookie
what
Monster.
yeah right. So what she just said was kind of goes towards your theory because it was something that jarred her.
Yeah,
like
I
the
just think-
lawnmower in the wedding ring jarred
Right.
me. You
Because
know?
like
So maybe it's a significant thing, and then bam,
Well,
now
'cause, like,
that gets stored.
because
You know?
trauma works that way, you know. It's an extreme emotion that you don't know how to process it. Because there's a bunch of comics I listen to on podcasts all the time. And a few of them have like just become dads, and you know they're on the road all the time because they're not going to stop. They really have to be on the road now to pay for bills and shit. So they're always they go to Syracuse.
So now
they
it's
go
a
to fucking
job, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they have to be gone, but then they'll be gone for like a weekend or a few days, like longer than they need to be, and then they'll come back, and then their kid like starts like whimpering. But it's not like a shit, what are you doing here? It's more like they missed you and they don't know how to
Yeah.
process
Oh,
it. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, and like that is a reaction. The brain is firing. It's just not mature enough to start holding on to shit.
Yeah, I
you
guess
know?
so. And like you say, it may be in there, but it's just how to access it.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's with the trick. But yeah, you about probably any parent will say something like this. But back to the way the road life is for me, at work. So typically I'm gone for 36, if a pretty long one's 48 hours when I'm gone. you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And so I'd come home in the middle of the night a lot, just 3 in the morning or whatever. Whenever I got home, when the train came in, that's when it was done. And so every time I walked in the house, I went directly to your room, checked on you, right? And then, of course, the same. I check on both of you when Max come along, right?
Right,
And then your mom, but I'm just and it was incredible. It was sad, but it hit me hard how much you could change in 2 days, and I felt like I was missing it,
Damn.
because I wasn't there. Because
Yeah,
your babies develop quickly.
Yeah.
It just faces change,
Yeah, well,
complexions. You
think
got
about
more
it.
hair.
You go from a cluster of cells to a fucking baby in
Yeah.
9 months.
One day you're laying
Movies
on,
take longer than that.
yeah. One day you're laying on your back. And next thing you know, you're pulling yourself up on the stool,
doing chin-ups.
and next thing you know, you're booking across the damn. It just happens like that. Where your body changes that way too, and I always felt like I missed something, but there's another side to it. Okay, I was gone, so I'm trying to look for the bright side. 'Cause we
Yeah.
got, you
You're also
got to eat.
providing. You gotta do.
But I may have noticed things that I wouldn't have noticed had I been there every single day.
Okay,
because
yeah.
so
Right.
there's the only bright side I could come up with.
Uh-huh.
When you get so accustomed to something, you don't get a break from it. You literally watch a baby or whoever.
Right.
People get old, whatever.
Yeah.
But you watch that occur. It just develops. Every day, every
Yeah,
day, every
here's
day.
here's an
now,
analogy. Yeah,
now you
go ahead.
take a break from something for a while and you're very familiar to go back. It was many episodes of that all the time. And I would just see change. Sometimes nothing, Sometimes it was huge. You guys just, either one of you, it just, 2 dots would connect and now you're running. Or
Yeah.
now you're this, or now you can reach in the
Right.
drawers, or
Oh,
now
shit,
you can
discovered pogo stick.
now you can open the
Yeah.
refrigerator, just any of that shit, and it just happens like that.
Yeah, because
and you're happy, but you're also sad because you're so just lovable and just adorable. Just this just little thing that you just, but you guys change, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's bittersweet's exactly how I would describe that, because it's rewarding to watch you go, but it's sad.
Yeah, because I like that is it's good that you found the positive in that, where you wouldn't have noticed it if you say on every single day. Because like,
I'm not sure it's a positive, but it's a positive. You know, it's something. It's
like,
an
it's
aspect.
like watching paint dry, or like watching a tree grow. It's like you can only measure it with like if your brain doesn't give it attention, because it's not. It's going to be hard to like.
You need to compare and contrast.
Exactly,
I mean, I like to use that phrase in just in just my general way of speaking, but that's exactly what it is. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
But sometimes it was mind blowing. You know, sometimes it was just a trip.
I'm old enough now where it's like it's before FaceTime and shit, so you wouldn't see me. You would be
Right. Oh no, none of that.
Luckily, parents can do that now, where they can video chats and
the
shit.
The very first time you ever pulled yourself up on your feet, you did it on a big stool. It matched the brown couch and shit before the things you have now.
Yeah.
And your mother videoed that, and I was on my way. I was almost to Toledo, and she texted it to me. So look what your son did today, right?
Wow.
And so had you done it before that, nobody knew it. And I think it was probably your first time. It's the best I could say.
Among the first, for sure.
Absolutely. You know, and that was a fuck, man. But then the other side of that in my mind, back to, how am I going to process this, is that, I was earning to raise a family, you know, so you got to look at it that way.
Right.
I can't be at everything because the job's demanding, but, the pay is all right and the benefits are there and it's working out for us, you know. So sometimes you got to balance. You feel you're in a deficit because you missed something.
But I will say there were like countless times where it was like the Paragon, end of the 9 weeks things where your ass would never sit in those damn chairs because fuck all the other kids' parents, and I wouldn't know if you're gonna be there or not. And then more times than not, you'd be leaning against the mat. So I was like, perfect support.
Because anything that I was the one who took you guys on all your field trips in preschool, and kindergarten, and all that shit. Because those things I could plan. So there's
when the fucking firehouse opened up.
Yeah.
Like 09 or something.
Yeah. Because we got your brother a red hat too. Because you had that red fireman hat. And I asked that fireman. I said, "Can I have another one of those?" He has a little brother, And he goes, "Yeah, man."
I wouldn't remember that without you saying that, but that meant And like being a brother has like been a foundational part of my brain forever. Because I was telling it's either my memories of, because I don't have any only child memories. If I do, it's because I'm just baby, it doesn't really matter. But Max and I are so close in age that like it's either I was a brother already or I was in training, because I had like that book where it's like you'd always say we'll be old enough to play together one day.
That's right. When I told you that when Max is a little just ball of nothing, right? I said he's gonna get older, and I said one of these days that dude's gonna play with you. That's
so like
Luke
10 years later, he's doing backflips and shit.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, Luke was all about that. But I don't know how I could. I was trying to convey to you how big fucking deal this is. You got a fucking brother, man. I mean, this is your padre,
Right. I don't remember him being like a baby until like one of the very, very like clear memories whenever Max busted his head open at Kim's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was over at their house. Kim and Becky's my babysitter for those who are listening. I was at their house like in February, I think. Because we ran into Kim at Sam's Club. Mom and I.
Oh, you're talking about this? This is recently.
This is like I was working at Cook.
I thought we were going down memory lane. Okay,
well, I will for sure. It all ties in. But I was talking to them just as adults, which is like surreal because it's like I had so many memories of being a little kid.
I can relate to that with Roberta.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Miss Abel. Yeah.
Her kids are you guys are spaced apart, And what happened to me, like you said, you don't remember Max as a baby all that much,
right,
Well, you're developing your first memories too, so that's around a long time with that. But I'll tell you this, I have more just situational memories with you as a little bitty baby than I do with Max, because I had to split the attention then. So you got all the attention. But now there was never.
That's going to be the quintessential reason why, the oldest kid feels like the most revered, because it was just all your attention was on them for a period of time.
Yeah.
So they didn't know their kid. I never even thought about that.
So I couldn't pay as close of attention to him because you had to equal it.
You got two kids,
and he required one skill set, if you will, or whatever, and you required another. I was chasing you, grabbing you by your, you're taking off. I got to grab you by your belt loop and stuff. I was like, oh, now get back over here. It's like that you were on the fucking move, and he can't do shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was busy. And like so, yeah, I was just focused on because before you, Cameron a little bit and Maddie a little bit, and those were the only two.
My
babies.
cousins.
Yeah, your cousins a little bit older than you. They were the only babies that I ever paid any attention to.
Yeah.
Because I never had a reason to.
Right.
Man. So, I don't know. How busy was your house? Like you said, like I said, yours are the 2.5 years apart, right?
Yeah,
so,
same interval.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead. Cause
a boy and a girl.
Yeah, which is probably way different. Yeah.
Every parent thinks that they raise their kids the same, but you don't, because they're different. So you learn to expect, like, John thinks out of John, Autumn thinks out of Autumn. John's gonna be great at everything he does. Autumn's gonna struggle at anything to do with a ball. She just cannot, but I mean.
But she's a badass cheerleader.
Okay,
gymnast, all that shit, but they couldn't be, so they're very different anyway. And then of course, the sex issue being, but being a boy and one being a girl.
I think you meant just like
no,
treating like sexual maturity or
well,
where it's
sometimes there was such a thing as that inappropriateness because it wasn't the same. Nothing was. I remember the first time that somebody ever made an implication, about they were probably 10 and 8 at the time.
Yeah.
And someone made an implication about, well, when you grow up, John, you're going to have girlfriends and blah, 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 and whatever. And I was cool with that. Well, then the next words went on to an autumn one day, and it just kicked my ass. I started crying.
That's crazy.
I was like, the thought of somebody touching my sweet, innocent little red-headed monkey? No way, man. I did not want anybody to violate her.
If you don't want to run her off, she's on your lap.
Yeah, this is not the first cat to be on the podcast. Trent's cat.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, that
she tries to be a part of everything.
Cat.
She's Moxie Puntain Franklin was her birth name, and it's been changed.
Right.
But there's a story. But anyway,
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Dive into more of that because like obviously
as far as
just like because John has like he'll bring girlfriends home before Autumn would bring a boyfriend home because it's just because like the time and then being born and stuff. So like how'd you deal with?
Well, people were saying like
that?
he could feed from the well of having a younger sister because she have all the friends. She could feed from the well of having an older brother.
Yeah.
And so
I've always envied that about
there was that.
sisters. Yeah.
There was the
and you
implication
don't
there.
wanna, think anything about that, but like, John was always a great student, very responsible, not lackadaisical in any way, shape, or form, and just very driven and popular, just in his own. Okay, and Autumn was very sweet and loving. However, my son informed me at a point that was bullshit because that was the version of Autumn Mommy got, not really who Autumn was.
Oh.
And as it turns out, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Autumn can be a fucking bitch. I mean, she is the most loving soul at the same time. But man, if you get in her crawl, it is fucking on. That's just it. And I wanted her to be strong like that. Really, to be honestly, if I took away some of her femininity. I took away some of her innocence because.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's still like.
I did it.
It's like a life, like kind of a strength.
I would push her.
Yeah.
Like if she was wronged and came home crying to me about some little girl being a little asshole.
Yeah.
I'd go, you know what? How does that make you feel? And she'd tell me, and of course it was spiteful talk.
Right.
Because of course she learned it from me. Well, I'm going to go over there, and you know what? Blah, blah. And I'd say one day, I'll never forget the day. She was 11. And I turned around and I looked at her, I said, you know what? People will treat you the way that you allow them to. Get your ass over there and go do exactly what you said you were going to do. And she turned stark white and she was like, I don't know what to say. I go, yes, you do. You just told me.
Oh, damn. That's powerful.
I said, so you know
like
what?
Coach talk.
I go, let's go. And I walked over there with her. and I waited at the end of the driveway where nobody could see
how
me.
How severe was this thing? Just like
This-
shit talking or like
Well,
hair
okay,
pulling,
it
or-
was around this fucking social media, which don't even get me started,
right.
because
Which they're older than me, so then that's
Yeah,
they were,
like
it's
this-
probably newer when they were a little older than
Facebook was still cool for kids.
Oh wow!
All right. So she had this best friend that literally their backyard was adjacent to ours, and they were like sisters. You know, little girls go through that.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, with little girls, there's a lot of cattiness and a lot of jealousy and a lot of just they are different than boys.
For sure.
So anyway, on this particular day, evidently this little girl had posted this very animated, edited version of Autumn, and it turned her into the devil, and it was graphic. I mean, no nudity or anything like that, but it was really just fucking ugly. I thought, why would you? And it just pissed Autumn the fuck off, and she was like, why would you do that? And it was Autumn. Oh, here might be a bigger reason why it was her birthday.
Oh.
And you post that fucking shit on Facebook.
No, you're supposed to, put like selfies
like
and
happy
it's
birthday,
like an appreciation thing, like,
whatever the
like a
fuck,
collage.
But anyway, it hurt Autumn's feeling, and she was embarrassed because also the original photo was Autumn in her pajamas with her hair, like
not presentable,
fuck, just
right.
looking like, and a fragile ego, and whatever. So
She's 11.
the start of puberty,
Which 11 for
girls
dudes is way
it's way
older.
different, So
for sure.
But she just really, and you know what? She did, and I remember watching her at the front door, there, and having her come out on the porch, this little girl, and the girl stand there, the hips on the the hands on the hips, the foot side, the horse stance, and that whole thing, and Autumn, and then I watched Autumn freaking go, like she couldn't see me, she knew I was there. But she'd seen me enough times watch me hand somebody their ass.
Oh.
So it was like watching a miniature version of myself. And she swore. She used cuss words. And I was like, I couldn't be like, where'd you learn that shit? It was me.
Yeah.
Where
were you, Mom?
I was a single mom by that point. Their dad and I had divorced, and it was just them and I. So, I pushed Autumn to be able to, because I always say, I've told your dad this, People treat girls different when they know they don't have a man in their life to contend with. If you have a little girl that doesn't have a dad around, boys are going to take them a little bit more for granted. They know there's not a daddy there that's going to shoot them in the face if they fuck with their kid. There's no fear there.
I guess you're right, yeah. Because obviously equality is really important, and that's like really a big focus in today's culture, which is good. But it can't be completely forgotten that there's some biological differences that you just cannot get around, Just like this is the way people are wired,
Yeah, some people will argue that these days, but it's still what you're saying is true.
Right. And the idea of a spectrum, I think that's like coming more clear, because I've heard people talk about how the idea of like a butch lesbian, right? A woman who
The dyke.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
Yeah, yes,
the
man role.
right? But if they grew up in today's age, they would. Like I've heard people say, like, oh, then they would for sure be like a trans man, that's like the option,
Could be.
If that's like on like the the menu.
Could be. We didn't have those options.
Of course, and obviously it was super like sacrilege back then. But the idea of that, like, fundamentally, there's of course there's differences.
It's less shocking now because it's more common. But it's been carried. But it's been carried too far.
Sometimes,
by people that are fostering.
Yeah, it'll probably roll. It's just kind of like a tide. It'll roll
It needs
back.
It needs to get
Yeah, some people get washed up about that, but raising, because Max and I are really fucking different. We're both boys, of course. A lot of similarities there. To be, of course, like tearing down our fucking swing set was like, that was awesome. That was fucking great. It was a great way to spend a Saturday.
I heard about that recently.
Yeah, because we, I think we had the neighbor kids, where I got bit. They had grandkids that come over, and they would get on that thing, and they would like.
It was a child magnet, of course.
Yeah.
Right?
It just it was like bright colors and like
But it wasn't the most sturdy thing in the world, but it lasted through them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you needed.
Yeah, but now it's rickety and shit. It's not. It's just not cool.
Yeah.
So I gave you guys what, an axe, or I forget.
You
I
gave
gave axe and a ball bat and
you gave us a sledgehammer
shovel.
and like Max and I would trade off, where it's like, all right, I'm on sledgehammer duty, and then I was like, all right, I'll be on pickaxe duty. And this is like, we're thinking about Minecraft and shit. It's like labor. And so we were just like, we get to just go ham on this thing. You know, it's made of wood and it's dry rotted and like old and you know has like mildew. It's like it's ready to be just destructed, and it's a structure that's taller than us. So it's like, it's fucking on, dude. And so we just, it was tall as could be, you know, untouched before we got, and then like a few hours later, which felt like it was forever. We were just soaking up in it. We tore that thing the fuck apart, and you know, that's like a uniting boyhood thing. Like girls can absolutely, young girls, but like at a certain point they're gonna be like, I don't really give a shit about destroying when it's like a kid. It was like it was fucking awesome. Yeah. It was demolition.
It's what I would have wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would talk about the hood that I gave you guys.
Oh shit, yeah. So right next to that, there's a tree, and there's just you know, you have just a junkyard of shit over there. It's like you can go give a shit about a hood. So we would put it against this tree. And I was Max did this more than I did, but I was like, wouldn't it be fucking sick if I could run up on a wall and do a backflip off of it? I'm like, that would be the coolest thing ever. You know, it's.
This is a hood from a '71 El Camino.
Yeah, just
so it's pretty long.
Just a car.
It's a dark green hood. It was.
But it's as tall as me, so I can like take like 4 good steps on it and then like jump off and get high on it, right?
But I gave it to him. I said, dude, hit it. If you guys are mad, you're angry, you gotta just take your stresses out on this. You guys, it's yours. You can beat the hell out of it.
Steel punching bag. Yeah. So yeah, we got a lot of.
Over time they fucked that fucking hood up.
Yeah. So we put the pickaxe through it once, where I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. It was great, yeah. That's how I use drums now, because it's all percussive, it's all hitting. I burn calories. My heart rate goes up. It's just so I can just hit some shit, and then there's a reaction. You know, seeing a cymbal move and stuff. It kind of all like comes back. But I don't know if I've ever Max and I sometimes entertain the idea like our roles are kind of set in terms of like I'm the older brother, he's the younger brother. Like what if there was a third sibling, and like how would that even work? We never knew.
It depends on the child and what kind of people, because you said. You guys are different.
Right, we're so different.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly different.
You know, that's my brother and I, same thing, you know, and she's different from, just because you're siblings doesn't mean it happens, you know. But what if you guys had a sister?
Yeah, I know. I would love to be a protective older brother to have a sister. But Max is at the point where I can't help him. He's got it. Whatever trouble comes in, he can talk to strangers and tell them off everything, and he can can be in combat. He can take care of himself. So I hung my gloves up years ago, and he just street smart more than I am. I mean, he doesn't care about getting dirty or like getting fucked up and stuff. He's more boy. I'm more housewife.
That's a little harsh.
No, whatever. Yeah.
Here's how I express that to people, because I talk about you guys constantly. I have since the day you were born. And she's heard me say this, but I say when Stephanie got exactly what she deserved in you, because you guys have so much. You knew she knew what she wanted when she was a kid. You guys just have this focus, and
everything's compartmentalized.
Right, everything's planned. It's all structured, and that you feed off of that. It obviously works well for you, right?
Yes, it does.
And that's just the way you're built. And then I got exactly what I deserved with Max, because just like his dad, he wings it every single day. We don't plan shit.
No, right. Yeah, yeah, I know.
And
whatever day it is, you're just like, all right, whatever I'm doing today. Yeah. I wrote a calendar out for the whole month of May with a pen.
When you told us about tonight, that was the last time that was 6 weeks ago or some shit.
That was in April.
And so it was just etched. And you told us what you're going to be doing the nights before this and this week, and you plan things out, and that's your. I can't fucking handle that shit, right? Well, neither,
Well, I think it's the satisfaction of being like, I said something, I said I was going to do something, and then I pull it. It's like practicing what you preach, kind of. That's kind of what I've kind 100%. Of assessed it to,
Well, but if you just don't say you're going to do anything, because you're not going to do anything, unless you feel like it, you just don't even make those declarations.
Yeah. But then it'll kind of bite me in the ass, because I might bite off more than I can chew in like my brain, where it's like, so I'll go to the gym after work, and then I'll come home and I'll drum a little bit, and then I'll wrap up, and I'll maybe go fix my joke book, and maybe I'll trim my fingernail, whatever the fuck, right? Just shit that you can just fill the night up with, and then I'll forget some of those things, but so then I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't do the thing I didn't broadcast anywhere, I didn't make a post, I didn't tell anybody, it was just in my brain, and there's a bunch of different versions of me at like a meeting table, we're all discussing shit, where it's like, well dude, you didn't turn your fucking paperwork in, we still have long fingernails, so you have to fuck your socks up tomorrow, and it's like, well, do this shit on my desk in the morning, it's one of those things.
I guess you just got to put that up to judgment, okay? So on those days, your judgment says you can do all these things, And if you overcrowd your plan book, then something has to suffer, you know.
Right,
so
yeah.
that's just how that kind of thing evolves, you know.
I have tried to. There's a lot of like different versions I've seen of it where it's like there's this old Pixar movie called Inside Out where it talks like this girl named Riley has like all the different emotions in her head. I'm sure your kids are too old to have like enjoyed it, but basically it's just like showing you that like there's not just you in there. There's several. It's like a team, but it all come together to make a person. That's how the brain works. I just think there's so many versions of myself in there that are constantly conversing, you know. And
how you guys doing?
yeah, well, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah,
know?
right. Yeah.
The haircut crew took care of that shit today, so I'm looking fresh. You know,
Right
we're
on.
good.
Right on.
Yeah, and then
I'm letting it rip on top now, man.
I see that.
Got
Yeah.
a little,
You know, some floof.
little style to me. I didn't
Yeah.
know I could do that. You know.
Yeah, I want to because I want to like make a short film where it's just me, and I get to play all the guys. It's feel like a little passion project. Just kind of like physically inspect like what's going on in here because like I'm trying to practice boredom more often. Another reason why I like the 90s is that like you know there was no personal computer device in your pocket all the time. I feel like shit happened more.
Dude, it was in that respect like to socialize or meet girls or whatever.
Yeah.
You know. By comparison to the way it is now with the internet and all that, the world was absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
Because you were down to just a normal whatever, just a person. You're down to your cousins, friends, or your neighbors, or somebody at school. But did you live close enough to hang around the evenings or whatever? Maybe, maybe not. You know. So you have much smaller pool to choose from for friendships or
it's like
you know love interests or whatever.
Whoever's in the county basically. It's location.
So we instead of we cruise town, you know, and then you this girl be eyeing you. You can see it easily with hindsight, but you know you'd eye and you'd wave, and normally you wouldn't. So it starts right there, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Now you're focused,
there's probably
Been there.
equal to your initial reach out online or whatever. I don't know whatever that is these days.
Like Facebook, it was like called like a poke or whatever.
Yeah.
I just remember hearing about that.
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
Facebook movie
a
or
poke.
some
So-
shit. Yeah,
so
same
it-
kind of shit, just virtualized.
So then you depending on your situation, depending on your wingman, depending on the girl, where all these things factor in. You know, from a guy's perspective, now you got to work up the nuts to actually talk to this girl because you were.
You guys see me do that.
You were absolutely. But you're risking at a time when you're in your adolescence, so you're trying to figure out who you are anyway.
Yeah.
You're risking just absolute denial. Just
Yeah,
you know,
like
just say
protection
just like, you know,
and-
fuck you, never, not even with a bag on my head, all that. So now you got a guy with you here, so you know, so he's gonna hear it or what. You got to factor all that bullshit in. Sometimes you just say it ain't worth it. Sometimes you'd fucking do it, you know. And then back when I think because I didn't operate exactly the same as I do now then, of course, but there's fundamental things like
Yes.
I'm the comfortable in your own skin. It's a fuck thing to say, but it means something, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it took me personally mid-late 30s. You know, a lot of when you came along had a lot to do with it. I think it was just coincidence, but it kind of helped me polish off to become whatever the fuck I am now, right? But I have more confidence now, you know, of course.
Right.
But had I had that confidence then, of course, that's something everybody talks about, the way back
that's
machine.
the Uncle Rico philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, but
quarter mile.
and some people did, and they were more rare, but they stand out, you know, because they were successful because they just became themselves and didn't give a fuck, and I had to earn that, and I didn't learn the value of that until a little later in life, you know.
And are you comparing that to just like your personal journey, or just like how some people develop differently now because of the internet, just because the absence?
I can't speak to that, but I can speak to having the courage instead of it being in the scenario I just said. You know, it's a pretty punk ass, but whatever. You know, she you know, she's driving a Camaro, you're driving a Chevelle. You know, like I say, that's how all that starts. That's how he starts. And but the act of pulling up beside him, rolling your window down, you know, or whatever. That was that.
All right.
That was right. That shit, you got it exactly, because that's the era. That right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that took more balls a lot of times than I had back then. You know, but
yeah, but that's a fun feeling though.
It's you know it's all new and everything, and
like
so
your fucking arms were shaking, you're smoked by pit sweat and shit.
Yeah,
it's
but
like fuck, it's just like it's real. You're living, you know.
But what I learned is every single time that scenario or anything like it would have happened, right? The girl was just as nervous, if maybe more.
That's true.
You know, but you don't realize that then. And if you say, hey, just gone in with just both barrels, I'd just be Randy motherfucking Franklin, right? That works for me these days, but I didn't have the courage to do it then. Nowadays, I don't give a fuck. If, you know, you go in and Randy fucking Franklin, you know, and then if it doesn't turn out well, then it just didn't turn out, you know, and it just doesn't get a lot heavier than that to me, you know.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But back then it was a big deal because you were, I personally, you know, I was just touchy about, you know, failing in front of someone.
No, yeah, it's a big deal, yeah,
But-
especially with developing too.
But then later in life, you know, thankfully, and as far as I'm concerned, I figured out that it's just part of it, man. You just get up, brush yourself off, and go again, man.
I'm gonna wrap this into two things. One, you've reinforced this to me since forever. Is that just do Luke. It's a
Yes.
mantra, right? And it served me very, very well.
I'm happy to hear that.
Echoes in my head constantly, where it's like, I've heard the phrase like contrarian before, where it's like, oh, I don't want to do that because everyone else is doing that, and I don't want to be like everybody else, you know? Like, whether it be like, you know, like for example, a perfect thing is like AirPods. Like those hit the scene like right at the beginning of middle school, and I was like, everyone has those. I'm like, let me wear my cheap shit that does the same thing, you know? I don't want to blend in with I want to do my own thing without, you know, right? And so, but then I kind of leaned into that a lot, and then through marching band and just like your brain developing and just being comfortable and socially, like I found, you know,
You found your people. You found your place.
I did. I got
right
really
there.
lucky with that shit too.
Well, yeah,
But-
I mean, I don't know, but you did your part too, because you had, from the very beginning, you had upperclassmen taking you
and
under
that's
their
a
wing.
big part of my brain. Is I like to reach above and try to, you know, gather
Yes.
from people who are older.
Well, here I think you should give yourself some credit on that because, okay, yeah, you were eager, you know, you were just a new band kid in eighth
Yeah.
grade, so, you know. But they obviously saw potential in your ability there.
Yeah.
But they also saw who you are, right?
Yeah.
The real guy. And that's how you've won people over. It's just
That's-
because you have a thing. You have a charm about you. It's
You're charismatic.
yeah. She always says that.
They
you
call
know.
that Riz these days, but it's
And,
part of. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you very much.
It's but
charismatic.
those people, I have respect for several of those upperclassmen, you know, a lot
Yeah,
because
like
they
Trent, Blaze,
yes,
Ethan,
absolutely.
Stoney,
they
Elias.
they didn't treat you like the younger guy, even though you were. They treated you like an absolute just peer.
Yeah, I know, and that meant the world to me too, because like, but of course there was also like there was a gap there, but it was much smaller than it felt like, you know, than it actually was. You know?
Okay.
'Cause there was like a gentle hazing, I call it.
Sure, but look around at the other people your age, and were they being included in the upperclassmen's game like you were, or was it?
No, and remember we'd have a lot of rants back and forth. You and I did. I'd come home from 8th grade, and I would be like, I fucking hate the actual middle school, and then I get to go be with the big guys, and I get to do all this cool shit.
Yeah.
I come home, I'm the big guy, because like, or I could go back to middle school.